Sandra, giving you the sign.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Creative Spark 2021 Big Idea Challenge Success Session number 2. So let's get started with today's webinar. Before we start with any topic, I would like to remind you of the fact that this session is going to be recorded. So you will have access to the video after the session that you can watch it if you'd like to just refresh what we've said today, or if you missed the session today, you can pick up and watch it in your own time. Also, your video and audio are not accessible, so you will only see our screen and hear us talking. But we have a chat box where you can write your questions in, and we will have time at the end of the session to address all your questions. So feel free to just write them in the chat box and we will address them at the end of the session. Yep, write all your questions in there. Great. So a quick introduction about myself again. Some of you have seen me in previous sessions. My name is Sandra and I'm the Creative Spark Big Idea Challenge competition manager. I've been managing the competition for 2 years now. This is the 3rd year. And I'm very excited to have you on board with our success sessions and walk you through these sessions to prepare you to enter the competition with your best idea possible. So just a quick reminder about the timeline of this year's competition and where we are in the timeline of the competition right now. We are in the success session. You'll see the box is now in red. We are running these sessions from beginning of March until the end of this month. And after we finish the sessions, you are expected to prepare and submit your entry. And the deadline for the competition is the 7th of May. So 7th of May, you need to have entered your idea and submitted your idea to the competition. If you're late, unfortunately, we won't be able to consider your idea for this year's competition. Great, so quick reminder about timeline and deadline done. I will now pass the floor to my colleague Simon, who will help us with today's session. Oh, sorry, no, I've got a couple of more reminders for you. The next session's coming up. We have 2 more success sessions. The one next week is on Wednesday, same time, same day, and it's our 3rd success session about From Good to Great. We will talk about how you can bring your idea from a good idea to a great idea and really be successful in the competition. Followed by our last success session. We changed the date, so everyone take a note. New date, 31st of March. Success session number 4, pitch like a pro. So how to pitch, what makes a really good pitch, what to include in your pitch, how to record your pitch, and finally, how to submit an entry to the competition. So we will walk you through the whole process to make sure you know what's coming up and you're confident in your entry. All right, so now moving on to my colleague Simon.
Hi everybody and good morning. My name is Simon Boot and I work with Sandra on the Big Idea Challenge. I am the head of Accelerator, which is London Met University's startup incubator, and we're home to 25 tech startups, in addition to a number of smaller businesses. Now, I am from Tasmania, which is that little island indicated on the map there down the very bottom of Australia. So I'm a very, very long way from home. But I've been working at Accelerator now for about 9 years. Prior to doing this, I was a lawyer, both in Australia and here in the UK. I've started and run a number of small businesses, but what I do with most of my days is I work with students and graduates, helping them turn ideas into businesses. So very quickly, what we're going to be covering in today's session, we're going to be looking at the importance of problems. We're going to talk about your idea or your solution to a problem. We're going to drill down on being clear on whose problem it is or your customer. I'm going to show you an example. And then we're going to talk about problem and solution in the context of the 4 competition categories. So just to quickly revisit what this session is about. This is a success session, and so these sessions are designed to help everybody who wants to take part in the Big Idea Challenge submit the most successful or an idea that can give them the best chance to be successful. So over the next 3 weeks, we're going through the application process, unpacking each of the elements and exploring it in a lot more detail. The focus of today's session is around looking at problem, customer, and solution. So what ideas perform well in this competition? The ideas that perform well are ideas that can have the potential to become successful businesses. Also, in addition to having that potential, we're looking for teams that have the desire, the passion, and the skills to actually take that idea forward and execute on it. Now, just a quick note here, when I'm talking about businesses, I'm also talking about projects or not-for-profit undertakings, which can also be entered into the competition. So the focus of this success session, as I mentioned, is all around problem, solution, and customer. So to submit a compelling entry and to have a chance to become a finalist in this competition, you need to really nail these 3 areas. Firstly, having a really clear description of the problem that you're solving or seeking to solve. Secondly, going on to explain how your idea solves that problem. And thirdly, going on to explain who you solve that problem for. So I want to stop for a moment now and talk for a moment about why problems are important. And so on the right here, you can see a really helpful diagram, which has been developed by IDEO, which is a global organization that does a lot of sort of design thinking and innovation. And so 3 essential elements you need to consider when thinking about a new product or service or solution are desirability, feasibility, and viability. And where we want to be are at the very center of where these 3 circles intersect. So firstly, viability. What do we mean by that? Well, basically we mean, can whatever we're doing be profitable and or self-sustaining? So, can it continue doing the thing that it wants to do? So I'm just going to note, viability isn't something we're going to strictly examine in the Big Idea Challenge competition, but it's something you should be thinking about. Second, there is feasibility. Can you actually do it or make it the thing that you're setting out to do? So can you actually execute on this? Now, the feasibility isn't the focus of today's session, but it is something you'll need to address in your entry into the competition. The third one, which is the circle at the top where it's indicated that we should start, is about desirability. And so the question is, do people actually want the product or the service that we are looking to develop? And this is critically important for anybody looking to do something new. So, desirability, do they want it? I want to touch here on for a moment on why businesses fail. And so, many more businesses are started than actually end up succeeding. And the number one reason, and there are many reasons that businesses can fail, but the number one reason that businesses fail is because they build something or bring to market a product or a service that nobody wants. So I'll put in brackets to pay for. So basically, most businesses will fail because they don't have enough paying customers. And the reason they don't have enough paying customers is because customers simply aren't sufficiently interested in the product or service that they have developed. The reason for that is because customers don't exist to buy products or services. They buy solutions to their problems. And for anybody who's interested in the journey of entrepreneurship and sort of exploring this as a future direction, this is an absolutely important mindset shift that you can take on board at this stage. So shifting your thinking from the thing that you want to make to instead thinking, what problems can I solve for my customers? So we know now that we have to be solving problems for our customers. So does that mean that we can solve any problem that our customer might have? And I guess the answer to that is not quite. So, what we're looking to solve are what we call significant problems. So these need to be problems that frustrate people enough, are painful enough that they are prepared to pay money to have solved for them. If they're not prepared to do that, well, then it's an indication that this isn't a painful or significant problem for them. The second thing there, the point B, is that the problem that we're seeking to solve needs to be experienced by enough people for our business to be viable. And again, viability goes back to that diagram that we showed at the beginning of this presentation. So how do we know whether the problem that we're trying to solve for our customers is important enough, that it's a significant problem? One of the clues you can look for, or one of the indications, is that people are already trying to solve it for themselves. And so the things that they might be trying to do, these sort of underperforming solutions that they're using to try and solve this problem, they're already spending time or money or energy trying to do that. And so the evidence you're looking for is that people are already spending resources trying to solve this problem, which suggests to you there's an opportunity if you can solve it in a way that's easier for them. So are all problems significant? Well, we can see here some examples of products which maybe they're solving a problem, but they're not solving a significant problem. So you can see there a pair of ladies' shoes that have umbrellas attached to them to protect them from the rain. I'm sure we can all imagine the problem that a woman may not want her nice new purple shoes rained on. But is this a solution that a problem someone's trying to solve? The second thing is a butter stick. What problem is this solving? Well, I don't want to have to continually, spread butter on my knife or pick up butter with my knife. Again, it's probably not a problem that people are going to try and solve. Last one is the walking sleeping bag. Again, I'm not sure exactly in what context that would be useful, but again, the fact that you've never seen this product before suggests that it's probably not something that is solving a significant problem for people. So areas where there are normally significant problems, and there are lots and lots of problems that customers have, but here are some things to get you thinking. And so access. So, can you make a product or a service that was previously too expensive? Can you make it more accessible by making it more affordable? Speed. Are there things that take too long or too time consuming that you can make, faster or more convenient? Are there tasks or situations that are too complex that you can simplify or make more accessible? Are there products or services in the market that are of poor quality or very poor design that you can improve upon? Are there practices that are sort of environmentally damaging that you can help solve? So these are just some examples. There are many, many, many more areas of potential customer problems that you could try and solve. So the next question is, how do we know what problems a customer has? And again, you may well have your own hunches about what problems there are, but here are some other approaches. And probably the best approach here to knowing that a problem exists is firstly, if it's a problem that you have personally experienced. If you have personal experience of the problem, then you have personal understanding of the frustrations and the impact of the problem, then you are very well positioned to develop a solution to that problem. The second layer there is if you've observed the problem. So you haven't experienced yourself, but you've observed other people experiencing this problem. The third one is that it's a problem you've researched or maybe you've read about. And so you've got an understanding of the problem, but you're another degree removed from it. So, that's probably the good approach. The better approach is whether you've observed it. The best approach is whether you've experienced it. Ideally, though, a combination of all three, because having a really detailed understanding of the problem we're solving is critically important, both for this competition and being able to describe the problem we're solving, but also for launching your business at a later stage. So going back to revisit our compelling entry checklist, in order to submit a really compelling or strong entry into this competition, we need to have these three things: a significant problem, which we've just addressed. The second thing we're going to look at now is that your idea solves. So this is your solution to that problem. So when you're describing your solution on the entry form, it sounds really obvious to state this, but you need to tell us how your idea solves the problem. Now, this is one of the common problems that we've observed, that people go into telling us what the solution does. They tell us about its features, but they don't tell us how it actually solves the problem. The second mistake that we see commonly made when people are describing their solution on the entry form is that it isn't sufficiently clear. And so a really great way to address this, actually, no, I'll touch on that later. The third one, and this is the really big one, is that people describe a solution that doesn't solve the problem that they've identified. So it's really important that once you've described your problem and once you've described your solution, that you compare the two to make sure that your solution maps onto the problem. So down the bottom, I've said there, if the problem you've identified is that something is expensive, the solution must make it more affordable. If the problem we've identified is inconvenience, the solution must make it more convenient. If the problem is expense and we make it faster, see, we've got a mismatch there. So the solution must map onto and directly address the problem. Okay, so that's our idea. Thirdly, now we're going to talk about our customer. So problems don't exist in isolation. Problems belong to people or organizations. And so the question we have is, whose problem is it? And it's really important that we have a really clear understanding of this, because these people, the people who are experiencing this problem, are going to become our customers. So common groups of people that we can identify as customers are consumers, so people who actually buy and use the service. So they may be individuals like you and me, or they could be businesses. Now, down the bottom of the slide here, I've identified three different groups. So in addition to customers, and so what a customer is a customer is somebody who pays us for our good or service. And so if I'm selling loaves of bread in a market and somebody comes to buy a loaf of bread from me, that person is my customer. Now, the second group of people that we might want to talk about, depending on the nature of your idea, are users. Now, the difference between a user and a customer is that a customer pays us where a user doesn't. So a customer pays us, but a user may use our product. And a great example here is Facebook. So we may use Facebook. We don't pay anything to use Facebook in financial terms, but the customer of Facebook are advertisers. So they're the ones who pay Facebook money. We're users of Facebook. And so it's important to, look at your idea and say, well, in addition to my customer, do I have any other groups of people that I need to solve a problem for? The third group of people are what we call beneficiaries. And beneficiaries is just another way of saying people that we help. And so beneficiaries you'll most commonly find in not-for-profit ideas or in charities or in social enterprises. And so beneficiaries are people who are helped. And so an example of a social enterprise may be that it makes money by selling its goods or services to one type of customer, but then they take those profits and they reinvest those helping beneficiaries. So when it comes to actually describing our customer, you want to try and be as specific as possible. The more detailed picture you have of your customer, the easier it will be to find them when it comes time to start trying to sell your product or service to them. And so in terms of end consumers, so if our customers or our users or our beneficiaries are individuals, then here are some prompts on the screen now that you can use. Gender, are they male or female or otherwise? What race are they? What is their age group? How much money might their household earn? Do they own their own home or not? Are they disabled? What is their educational level? Where do they live? Do they have children, etc., etc. So we want to try and build up a very rich picture of exactly who our customers, our users, and our beneficiaries are. A quick example, okay, to illustrate some of what I've said. So I don't know whether you're familiar with this product, but you can see it's a small plastic suitcase with wheels. So if I tried to sell you a small plastic suitcase with wheels, you'd probably say, no, thank you. And that's because, remembering back to the start of this presentation, customers don't exist to buy products, they exist to buy solutions to their problems, or customers buy solutions to their problems. And so that's why in this context, me trying to sell the product, which is again is a plastic suitcase with wheels, doesn't make any sense because it doesn't explain the value or the reason to buy. So instead, let's go back through the structure that we've developed through this session. We're going to ask, well, what's the problem that we're trying to solve with this plastic suitcase with wheels? Whose problem is it? And what's the solution? So what's the problem? So I don't know if any of you have children or you've observed these things in use, but parents tell us that traveling with children is stressful and tiring. Children need constant attention. When you're traveling, they're in an unfamiliar environment and parents are worried about losing them. Also, children get tired having to walk. So who's experiencing this problem? Well, parents who travel with children. So they might be traveling on trains, they might be traveling in airports, but the important thing here is it's one or more parents traveling with children. Now, we could say that this is experienced by everyone, but really when we're thinking about our solution, and it's quite a premium little case, we're probably targeting it at parents who have the income or the means to buy special travel luggage for their children. So what is the solution? So it's called Trunky, if you haven't heard of it. It's a suitcase that doubles as a rideable toy. They're made in bright colors, typically in the style of some kind of animal. The Trunky, being the little suitcase, travels the things like toys and snacks that the child might have, whilst transporting and entertaining the child. All of those things are true. But again, that's not what we're selling. The important words are here at the end. And that's by transporting the child and entertaining the child, the Trunky gives the parent one less thing to worry about. And so we aren't selling a plastic suitcase with wheels, we're selling peace of mind for stressed parents when they're traveling. And so that's why being really clear on the problem you are solving is so important to developing products and services that people actually want to buy. So what I want to run you through now is some top tips for addressing problem, customer, and solution in your big idea entry. So to quickly recap, the 3 essential things that we need to explain in our entry are: 1, that we've identified a significant problem. And again, remember, by significant, we mean a problem that people actually want to solve and they're trying to solve at the moment. Number 2, it's important that our idea actually solves that problem. And then number 3, that we have a clearly defined customer, so the person who is experiencing this problem. So first top tip is that a problem well stated is half solved. And so you can only really develop a solution to a problem when you really understand the nature of the problem. So going out and talking to customers who have this problem to get an intimate understanding of it is really important. And this is something that we'll explore more in next week's success session. The second thing is a questioning technique you can use called the 5 whys. And so often when we think about problems or we talk to customers about problem they have, we don't get to the heart of the problem. And instead they give us a surface problem. And so I want to show you a technique you can use, or explain a technique called the 5 whys that you can use to drill into problems to get to the heart of them. So the 5 whys is a questioning technique where you basically behave like a child who continues asking the question why when presented with an answer. And so if you were to ask, or the example here on the screen is that the problem is that somebody ran through a red light. Well, we ask the question why, and they say, well, they were late for work. Well, why were you late for work? Well, I woke up late. Well, why did you wake up late? Well, because my alarm clock broke. Why did it break? Well, I didn't check if it worked. And why didn't you check if it worked? Because I forgot to do it last night. And so we've actually kind of identified there that whilst the problem was running through a red light, the real problem was a failure with our sort of going to bed routine. So taking this back into kind of the context of Trunky, which is the travel suitcase that we just looked at, you know, if we asked parents, we said, you know, tell us about the experience of traveling with children. The first thing they'd probably say is, well, traveling with children is really hard. And so, you know, if we weren't inquisitive, we might take that on face value and say, right, well, the problem we're solving is that traveling with children is hard. But actually, that doesn't really give us enough information to develop a solution. We know that traveling with children is hard, but we don't know why. You know, it may be that they're always hungry, or they continue getting lost, or whatever it is. And so we need to drill down and continue asking, well, why is traveling with children hard? And eventually we get down to the bottom of the screen here and a parent tells us, well, actually, you know, children when they're traveling get tired, and often we're walking between terminals and I'm carrying my own suitcase and I've also got to try and carry a child. And so the children get tired and then I've got to carry them, which is a really painful problem for me. So you can see then by starting out with sort of a problem being traveling is hard, we've actually drilled down into, right, well, children having to walk is our problem. So now if we can develop something which makes it easier for children to walk or means they don't have to walk at all, like the Trunky, then we've got something that parents might be interested in. Okay, the next top tip is what I call the winning mindset. And so many students and graduates that we work with at an early stage are very interested in their idea or their solution, which is understandable, but a much stronger mindset to adopt is what we call loving the problem and not the solution. So instead of being wedded to your solution, instead fall in love with your customer's problem and said, and the outcome you want is to, I want to find a solution to my customer's problem because that's going to give me a much stronger chance of business success than falling in love with my solution, which may not speak to customers. I think this is my second last tip. Again, I've spoken in this session about being really specific about who your customer is. And again, one of the traps we see early stage entrepreneurs fall into is thinking that their customer is everybody. They look at their product or service and say, well, everybody could potentially use this. And it may be the case, but it's never the answer. And so we want you to be, or your entry will have a much stronger chance of success if you are specific as possible. If there are lots and lots of different types of people who are experiencing your problem, try and drill down to work out who is experiencing the problem most painfully. So the question we're getting at, who will your earliest adopter or who will your first customer be? Who is that group of customers most likely to be? The last point I'll make is around solution clarity. And so when I spoke about solution earlier, we were talking about one of the mistakes people make is not describing their solution in a way that is clear enough for the judges. So the judges must understand your idea and how it solves the problem in order to, to consider you as one of the finalists of the competition. So to make sure that you've done this, a really great tip is to use the explanation that you're going to submit on your entry form and using that, explain your idea to a stranger. And then have that stranger who doesn't know you or your idea explain the idea back to you. If the idea makes sense, well, then it's safe to assume that the judge will also understand the idea. Okay, so I'm going to pass back to Sandra now, who's going to talk about problem and solution in the context of our different competition categories.
Great. Thank you very much, Simon, for that very, very interesting problem and solution approach. And as Simon already mentioned, it's very, very important and at the heart, really, of your idea that you know what problem you're solving and that your solution actually solves the problem. But what does that really mean in the context of our competition? So as you probably know, we have several categories that we will enter ideas in our Big Idea Competition 2021. The 4 categories we have are climate change, creative category, social impact, and digital technology category. So I will now walk you through some examples so that you can see how this problem and solution approach works in each one of these categories with some examples from last year's winners. So let's start with our climate change category. For this example, I don't actually have one from last year's competition because, as you know, it's a brand new category. So we didn't have a separate category for climate change ideas last year. So what I did was to look up a company which is an actual startup in the UK, and I will walk you through this example now. So in this specific example, the problem that this company has identified is that customers in the UK want fresh fruit and vegetable, but these don't grow locally, and transporting them into the country is polluting the environment. So this means that as consumers in London and in the United Kingdom, we expect to find bananas, strawberries, other fresh berries and other more exotic fruit all year round. But it's very cold in this country, so there's no way that bananas can actually grow in the UK. So we need the food supply chain to basically grow bananas in North Africa and ship them to London so we can find them in the supermarket. This transportation is not good for the environment. They come on ships in big containers and it's very polluting for the sea and for the environment. So this is a real problem. So this company called Let Us Grow has a solution to this problem. They offer, or they are, aeroponic vertical farms. So what these farms do is they grow plants which normally don't grow in the UK because of the climate and the warmth, but they grow them indoor vertically without any soil and with very little water. So you can see that plants that would normally need a very big field and grow outside of the UK and therefore need to ship all of the produces to London now could actually live and thrive around London in big warehouses and supply us with the fruit and vegetables that we want all year round. So that's an example of the climate change category and how the problem could be identified and mapped or matched back with the solution that really solves this problem that the company has identified. So for you as a competition participant, if you want to take part and submit an idea in the climate change, there are some questions that are really important and you need to think about and make sure that you have very clear answers to. So the first question is, what is the environmental problem that your idea addresses? Sounds very easy, but climate change is a complex phenomenon, so make sure you're very clear what problem you want to solve in the environment and in the climate change area. Also, what or who is contributing to this problem? So in the example we looked at before with lettuce, it's obviously there's several aspects. There's the people, the consumer in the UK who expect produces all year round. There's the actual transportation ships and other, just supply chain issues that contribute to the problem. So it's a very complex problem and you should make sure that you understand all the elements playing a part in it. And finally, what is the environmental impact of your idea and how would you measure it? So it's important that you know how your idea would improve the situation or address this problem, and how will you measure it. So will you measure, you know, the carbon footprint of the transportation of bananas from North America to the UK? And if that decreases, would that be your impact? Just make sure you're very, very clear how you will measure your impact and see if you're successful and you're helping the climate change. Right. For our next category, creative. This is one of our last year's winners from Kazakhstan. She is the creative winner and also the country champion for Kazakhstan. And so this is Martebe on the screen now, and the problem she identified last year is that Kazakhstan is a multinational country, but many of the inhabitants of Kazakhstan are not familiar with its traditional folk music. So it's obviously culturally very important that traditional folk music is known in the country and promoted. And so the solution she came up with was Modern Music, which is an online Dombra school that she teaches with now 2 new people. She delivers online Dombra classes as well as Dombra concerts to promote folk music in Kazakhstan and internationally. So you see, the problem here is, well, just the fact that folk music, traditional folk music in Kazakhstan is not promoted enough, and it's getting lost. And her solution is to promote the music and teach the new generations by delivering online classes of this beautiful instrument. Right, for the social impact category, this is also one of our last year's winners from the Ukraine. And this team of ladies identified that there is a problem in the Ukraine with people with disability finding it difficult to find employment. So it's very difficult for people with disabilities, specifically Down syndrome and autism, to be introduced to the professional working life, and they need some extra help and introduction into the world of working, really professional work. So their solution is an inclusive arts atelier called Lady Di Atelier, where through arts therapy, a team of very talented women works with these children with Down syndrome and autism and teaches them to basically produce some art pieces, which then get sold in fashion shows to just have some more funds to teach more arts therapy to these kids. So you see how the problem they've identified, so problems can be solved in many ways, but the problem they have identified in this specific example, they decided to solve with an inclusive arts atelier. And it's a wonderful project. Check it out if you can. And if you are thinking about a social impact idea, there is also, again, additional questions that you should think about and just be really clear about. So what is the problem or unmet need that your idea addresses? Generally, we've spoken about this. Who is experiencing this problem or need? This links back to the beneficiaries that Simon introduced before. So these users might not be the ones that pay for your product, but it's the ones that you help with your idea or with your services. And again, think about the impact that your ideas want to have. So for a social impact idea specifically, you're looking at impacting the life of those in need. So make sure that you understand what that impact is, and ideally you might want to measure it as well. Right, finally, looking at the digital tech category. An example problem that one of our last year's winners in Kazakhstan identified is that patients, medical practices, and insurances waste a lot of money and time on paperwork. So this winner identified that in Kazakhstan, there's a very paperwork heavy and admin heavy process when it comes to getting an appointment at your doctors and then reaching out to the insurance if you need the insurance to jump in to pay for some any support you might need. So it's a proper problem, because doctors lose leads from patients because patients have to wait too long until they get an appointment, and insurances need to wait too long until they receive the documents to pay for the patients. So it's a very slow and wasteful process. So this Murat, our winner from last year, after identifying this problem, came up with SmartDoc, which is his solution. And this solution is an online portal and an app which connects all these different pieces together. So the medical practices are going to be connected directly with the insurances, so they can cross-check all of their documents in a digital environment and don't need to wait for the paperwork to arrive. And this will result in a very much more dynamic and faster environment where patients, medical staff, but also insurances can work, and so saving time and money for all these stakeholders that are involved in this great idea. Okay, so these were some examples in the different categories. I hope they helped you to understand what kind of problems fall in the categories and how this problem and solution approach should be used when you prepare your entry. And this basically brings us on to questions. So we've been answering some in the chat already while we were going. And if we have any more questions to come now, we can answer them. Okay, so I think we have answered most of the questions in the chat box. If you have any other questions coming up that you would like to add now, we have 10-15 minutes where you can ask us anything and we can answer your questions.
Should I give me those?
Okay, let's wait a little bit to see if some questions come in. Okay, so I don't believe we have any more questions. If you do have questions that come up later, you can always send us an email. You can reply to one of the messages that we send you with the details of the next session or the recordings, and they will come straight to me so I can answer all your questions. Feel free to just ask any question if you need some more details. And I think we're going to wrap up this session for today, and we will see you next Wednesday with our third session from Good to Great, where we will talk you through how to really take your idea entry from a good idea entry to a great idea entry and maximize your chances of succeeding in the competition. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us today, and we will see you next week.